And welcome to tonight's member webinar where we look at ASX investment opportunities in review for the 30th of September. The information covered this evening is general advice only. For more information on the products we provide, please visit investorsignals.com or give me a call on 1300 614 002. Up on screen is the graph of the Nasdaq. What I've done here is just shuffled. So obviously after these higher low formations, which is where we originally had the support level, I've now shifted it up to sort of snug pretty tight to the price action at the end of last week. We're under red arrow, but it's not until the price action closes below that 10-day average that you'd really start to lean on the short side of the index. Similar with the S&P 500, you'll probably even bring this one up kind of tighter under sort of Wednesday night's low there. So again, recognize it's under red arrow, but for the time being still above the moving average. If we see a bit of a rollover there, then I'll reverse those support lines around and they'll sit on the top as resistance. If we have a look at our local market, closed on the session highs today. Obviously, we've seen a fairly big rotation out of banks into miners, in particular the metals, but probably likely now to also be in the energy complex, or at least in oil. Other parts of the energy complex have done quite well, but at an index level, still opportunities on the buy side of the market, but just recognise under red arrow. And similar to those US indices, if we see this roll over, might start to look at the short side of the index. Having a look at what's gone on the advisory blog, I'll just refresh that. And Beach Energy, so this is part of sort of the idea of being long oil and gas. So Beach Energy, you could run a stop loss either at the pivot low, which is where the mouse cursor is there, or you could run a stop loss at a little bit tighter, which would be kind of that high low formation there, which is the second yellow block of highlight. The crude oil ETF, the correction here, so this is through the ETF, triple O. Down here again, you could run the stop loss at the pivot low there at 494, or keep it a bit tighter at that higher low formation there. But generally sort of fairly bullish on energy, and in particular sort of Santos, which we'll have a look at tonight. The global energy ETF, this is another way of picking up exposure to the global energy companies. The correction here from a little above 7 down to this $6.20, so that support level is highlighted there. Tabcorp, bullish on this. We've had the higher low formation support there at 42, so you want to lift your stop loss from the pivot low up to this higher low formation here, and looking for that momentum to continue higher. Santos, I like the look of this, corrected from $9 now down to $6.94, finished today just back above $7, but looking for this to be a support level that holds and ultimately trade higher. Coles, I don't think there's any rush on this, but there's a couple of new buy signals that you should be adding to your watch list. Coles, I think you could start to look for your investor portfolio if you don't hold it, somewhere between that $17 and $18, call it. You could start looking to accumulate within that range. CSL, likewise, I don't think there's any rush on this, but between sort of 265 and 285, you could start to accumulate the stock there. CBA, again, no rush on this, and I wouldn't be aggressive. I think CBA is expensive. If you look at the history here, it shifted from sell conditions to algorithm buy there at $100. Probably wouldn't be doing too much on this until around that $120 level, and we'll revisit that a bit more over the next week or two. Ampol, that was the early stage of that trade. We started taking profit on that. It's not a major position in our portfolio. It was really just a trading position, so we started closing that out today at around $30.30, a little bit above that. Brickworks Limited, continue to hold this, bullish on that. It's a major holding in our property fund, which continues to do well, up over 20% now for the year. Ingham's Group, looking at just accumulating this, which we have done within this price range. The stock's now just jumped back above $3, but reasonable opportunity there, and there we are, back to last week's webinar. Now with tonight, I wanted to jump through a few things tonight, so let's go straight into the watch list, and then I'll circle back around and have a look at a couple of the algorithm portfolios. A lot of what we've concentrated on over the last few weeks has come from my watch list, and many of these trades have now rallied pretty significantly. So, nevertheless, let's go back, recap on those opportunities, and where we see the value going forward. CNews, really performed very well. We were bullish on that, recognizing that the switch out of the IAA that I'd spoken about into the IZZ, which is the China-facing large cap, and this one here, the CNew, and that's performed well, and that's a major holding in our fund combined with the IZZ. Probably a little more upside, but I don't think the China trade just keeps on charging. I think we're pretty close to sort of that rotation or that short covering largely completing there for the moment. Tabcorp, bullish on this. I think you just simply stick with this, let the moving average ride that higher, and have a look at it on a break below the moving average. Mineral Resources, so this is all part of the commodity trade that we've been talking about. That's ran pretty hard. Some of these we've started locking in profit on at the moment. Started a little bit on Friday, continued today. Beach Energy, so bullish on that. Preference Santos over Beach. Fortescue, so the iron ore trade, we certainly participated in that. Pepper Money, still bullish on that, so there's one that hasn't already taken off, so you could have a think about being long this with a stop loss below that $1.28 there. The oil ETF, you could be long oil, so through Santos or through this triple O ETF, put your stop loss below that pivot low there at 494, or if you want to play it a bit safer, you could even run the stop loss there at 510. Pro Medicus, a little expensive. Brickworks, bullish on that, but obviously it's ran pretty hard from the 25 level, but we continue to hold that. Not doing there in Brambles. Whitehaven Coal didn't do anything there. Ampol just started trimming the gains on that today in our trading portfolio. It's really just a percentage, locking in the percentage return there, but Ampol still looks reasonably promising. The fuel ETF, I think this is something you could certainly have a think about. This is global energy companies, and it's all part of sort of that bullish tilt towards oil prices at the moment. Reliance Worldwide, that's an older trade. Viva, not doing too much there at the moment. The global copper ETF, we've largely sort of locked in profit on that one. Not in our longer term investor portfolio, but just in our trader portfolios. The oil futures, so just another way of looking at that bullish oil story. Collins Food, reasonable bounce there, not doing too much there right at the moment. AZJ, we've been bullish on that and continue to hold that down. EDIs perform well for us. Skipping through a couple. This food ETF, so I draw your attention to this. I think this is something that the switch from sell conditions there into algorithm buy, the higher low formation, the higher low support there, so you could have a stop loss at 628 or at sort of that pivot low there at $6 odds, 606. But the setup there looks good to me. And I think that high-low formation there likely holds, and there's a trading opportunity there. Treasury Wines look pretty good as well, so might be one to have a think about. Your stop loss is fairly wide on it. Your stop loss is going to be back there at 1080, but Treasury Wine looks to be setting up okay. The Cure ETF, which is S&P Biotech. Keep an eye on this. I think if this sort of dropped back down into this $45 level, I think that would be a buying opportunity in a lower interest rate environment. ASX, happy with that as an income contributor portfolios. iPay, major drivers there at the moment. Coal, so we looked at that earlier from the advisory blog. Again, I don't think there's any real rush into this, but if you saw that trade down a little bit further, certainly down towards that $17, I think you'd be a buyer of it. This cloud ETF, I think within the tech space, that's something that looks like a reasonable risk return. Flight Centre, not doing too much there at the moment. PEXA, remain bullish on that. Global health leaders, keep an eye on this on the pullback, maybe back down to 1050. That's a buying opportunity. So this is the Ingham's trade, the correction here from 450 down to 295. You could start to have a think about a small exposure there for your investor portfolios. Gold Roads, we don't mind that as a gold exposure at the moment. The China, so the IZZ, so this is the rally, so it's rallied about 20% just over the last few weeks. And that's obviously off the back of the stimulus that has been announced by the Chinese government and the easing of sort of some of the restrictions around the housing market. Woodside Energy, so just a way of exposure, so preference Santos, but certainly Woodside very close second, even though we recognise it's a counter trend trade under sell signal. So again, our preference is Santos, but certainly have a think about Woodside. IGO's probably the lows in here, I'd imagine. I think this continues to rebound. BHP, so again, we've started locking in some gains in some of these resource names. This here still looks okay, so depending, if you've bought it at low levels, in some cases we've just traded out of it, but continue to hold it in sort of the longer term portfolios. Rio started locking in some gains there. Iluka, we started locking in gains there. Datura Royalties, never really participated in that one. The uranium bug, cyber security, AMP, still bullish on that. And so we're seeing a bit of an increase. So just jumping back to Bitcoin, so another algorithm sell signal there at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see if that overhead resistance holds there. Okay, now so that's the watch list. Let's just jump through some of these algorithm models. So looking at the investor model portfolio, the top 200, least number of days to the top, and let's just have a look at the first sort of dozen companies that have been added in here. So just recognizing that Transurban's now switched from sell conditions into algorithm buy. If we get into a weaker economic data, lower rates, then that's obviously going to support the outlook for Transurban. So I think you could certainly start, at least add this one to your watch list. As soon as it trades above that moving average, both traders and investors could start to have a look at that. So keep that one on your watch list. Coles, same thing really, just watch this. I think the downside pressure is probably a little bit greater than $18. I'd be a much stronger buyer of it if I saw the price down around that 17.25. CSL gain, I like this, keeping an eye on the reversal, but certainly would be a much stronger buyer if I saw it down around that 270 level. IPH, not doing too much there at the moment, not doing too much in Medibank. Gold Roads, bullish on that. Insignia Financial, not doing too much there, but the setup actually looks pretty good there with it bouncing off the support. Flight Centre likewise looks okay, running off the recent support level. Paladin, Webjet, Amcor. So these are all stocks that have dropped into the top 200 investor portfolio, and I'm just skipping through. So Mineral Resources still under buy conditions there, which is interesting, whereas a lot of the other resources have now shifted to sell signal. Viva Energy, just highlight that's under buy. Pilbara's under buy. Ansell's performed well. Brickworks has performed well. So okay, I won't go through all of those, so in your own time you can jump into the investor model portfolio. So that was the 200. If we just drop that down to the 100, so you're seeing Transurban, Coles, CSL. If we go down a little bit further, top 50, Transurban, Coles, CSL, Medibank, Amcor, and then obviously down the top 20. And those three names obviously are part of the top 20 index. So they're all three fairly recent additions there, Transurban Coal CSL, and then the other ones have been in there for a while. Jumping into the trade table, let's have a quick look at what we see there. The ASX 200 has actually got quite a few signals in it at the moment, and these are doing quite well. It's resulted in the table being up about 7%. Since the beginning of the month, so it was up 40%, now it's up 47%, and these are the holdings that are in the portfolio. Best performer there, Whitehaven, Insignia Financial up 11, Yancoal up 9.3, and the stop losses are there, all in place. On the US trade table, a little bit quieter. The S&P 100's only got really the two positions in it. And if we go down and have a look at the impact it's had on the performance, it's rallied from being up 17% to being up 22%. And the Nasdaq trade table, if we have a look at a few more positions in it, best performer, this Constellation Energy, and the impact that that's had after a bit of volatility from 30 down to 16. It's now rebounded back up 16%. And the tech disruptors, not a lot of new signals in here, but the performance continues to do really well, tracking up 27%. Thank you for listening in, and I look forward to speaking